It is my pleasure now to introduce to you our guest speaker, who I just presented this document to. I met Shane Hernandez at the county state convention with one of my fellow delegates, also a fellow Tea Party member, William DeVette, who's sitting right here. Well, say hello to everybody. Very, very instrumental in the Tea Party politics for over 10, maybe 15 years. So has our guest speaker been so involved in different districts. We represent the Lapeer County area. Shane started his political prowess in the Tea Party organization, and he will address this more than a decade ago. This young man demonstrates leadership qualities, and he now presently has won an election to the House, and he's become the House Appropriations Chairman, and he represents the 83rd District out of Port Huron. The Tea Party unit was the Blue Water Tea Party, and then evolved to the St. Clair. So, and we are still going to be involved with Shane in this capacity, trying to coordinate our activities together to expand our efforts during this crucial 2020 election cycle. But the first part of Shane's presentation, I hope, is going to deal with his legislative actions. I heard him speak, and we spoke somewhat at length yesterday at District 10. He's got some great insight. He's got some great legislative enactment that he's trying to deal with the governor, who he feels, as I think we all do, feel a little bit out of control. And I almost feel like we're mirroring Washington a little bit. And Michigan is the crucial state. And he will address why it's so crucial and what we need to do to offset a situation where we lose control of the legislature. Our Senate seat is, what, 3? We have 3, and the House is close. But the bills sponsored by Shane are the Appropriations, Grants, and Transfers, State Administration. He will address these. This is a young man who demonstrates great qualities, great core values, and I think it will be very enlightening to us. And he has spoken before this body earlier this year, but because we're in the budget crisis, and I had asked and requested some of the commissioners to come here because what we do on this budget affects our county government and our county budgeting process. And it's very, very important as to how we resolve all these issues, some of these online vetoes are probably a good idea, and some are outrageous, just for political purposes. So with that said, Shane, I welcome you, and I thank you very much for your attendance.
Do I need to use this for recording purposes, or can I be really loud? I can be really loud. Can you guys hear me?
Loud.
All right. My guess is the last time I spoke here, if I would have asked you if you thought that was going to happen, probably not many people would have raised their hands. They would have said, yeah, you guys will give her 20 cents. Or the government will close over it. The reason we are where we are is because the House and Senate stuck together, worked together. It was 2 against 1. And the governor desperately wants to be the one that has 2 against the Senate. And there will be immense pressure on the Senate and our members that are in what we will call toss-up seats, 50-50 districts, to get something done on a gas tax increase or a transportation fee or whatever it is. So it is extremely important that we hold the House of Representatives in Michigan. You will see that we are working together 100%. I'm moving on from the House. I'm running for Congress. I'm either going to go to D.C. or I'm going to go home. One or the other. I'm okay with that. I have a career before this, and I'll be all right. But I am 100% committed to our caucus still, because I live in Michigan. We don't need $2.5 billion more in taxes. And that was just the gas tax. A lot of us forgot about the small business tax increase in the governor's budget. That got overshadowed, right? We didn't get that either. Here we are, the government's still open, and we didn't get that. So this is extremely important. Right now, House Republicans are outraising House Democrats 2-1, pushing 3-1. But we can't get overly excited about that because we know that New York and California money will come in. We know that the governor is not fundraising for her reelection right now. She's fundraising to elect some friends to work with her. So we will have everything stacked against us. People in a district like this, in Lapeer County, it is so important for you to get behind your representative and your senator right now, early, because when election year comes, we don't need your representative here in Lapeer County. We need your representative helping his colleagues in Oakland County, and in Kalamazoo County, and in Traverse City, and in Muskegon. That is how we do this as a team, and that's where we need them. And you can't, you know, it's tough, but I'm in a district like that too, where I want to be home in my district. But we have to understand as a base, your representative is not going to be effective for you if the Democrats have the gavel. Your representative is going to sit there, watch things happen, and push the no button over and over again. Right now, your representative is chairing a committee. He's getting things done. We need to keep it that way. Moving on to the budget itself. I gave an update, I think it was, I don't know, back in spring, April, something like that, where we were with the budget. At that time, we were working on the House budget. As most of you, I mean, you guys are politically involved. You understand pretty well how this works. The governor presents a budget, and February, the House and Senate start to work on their own budgets. By normally May, you have 3 different budgets, and somehow those 3 have to come together for a consensus. In the Snyder years, that normally happened by June. Took a little longer this year. Some would say we still don't have a consensus. I want to go back to that House budget a little bit, talk about a few things in there, because I think sometimes in politics, and I'm guilty of this as formerly a Tea Party conservative who just, I want that big leap, right? I want that big step. And sometimes we have to understand that in politics you have to sometimes test the waters and put an idea out there. You'll hear legislators a lot of times ask, well, how many other states have done this? Or has this ever been done before? A lot of times it's valuable to be able to have these things put out there, ideas that we can come back to. And there were 3 things done that some of them have been undone. Or, well, let's say 4 things. I'll get into a 4th thing I don't have written down here. But a few things done that I want to address that I think can have a lasting effect. One, the idea of voting on individual budgets as opposed to an omnibus budget. There are, I believe we did 16 department budgets, as opposed to rolling them into an omnibus budget. Each one of them having to stand on its own merits, having to be scrutinized on its own merits. Now, I was told you only have 58 members. I don't think there's any way we can pass these with 3 Republican votes only if we have to do 16 separate votes. I actually think it, in the end, worked out better, where we had members who might have voted against the entire budget because of an issue in DHHS, where now they just voted against DHHS, but they voted for the other 15. But it also, I think, took the focus of our subcommittee chairs and really increased that, or working with members and making sure that the issues were addressed, and not just thinking at the end we can just roll this thing together and we just push this one vote through. I think it is a better process for the institution. And we actually kept individual budgets all the way through the process, all the way to the governor's desk. The second one is the transfer process that happens. A lot of times you'll have, at the end of the year, and these aren't the fault of anybody, it's hard to take a Medicaid line that could be, $10 billion and estimate that properly. So you might underspend that line, and somewhere else you've overspent another area. A department can submit transfer requests to the Appropriations Committee and say, we need to transfer money from this line to this line. And in the past, I've watched that process be something that isn't fully understood, something that a lot of times is just, well, the department needs it, so just throw the rubber stamp on it and let's move on. And it comes to the Appropriations Committee, it gets a tiny amount of time, and it moves on. Well, so if you really dig into them and look at them, there could be tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars moving in these transfer lines. These are things we need to dig into. Why is this line underfunded? Why is that line overspent? Yeah, we need to address it, but right now with a transfer, but what do we do different next time? So we actually created a two-step process for transfers. Every single transfer request went to the subcommittee first for that area's budget. So it was a transfer request for MDOT, it went to the MDOT subcommittee. They held a hearing specifically on just the MDOT transfer. Then that chairman comes to the Appropriations Committee and says, Mr. Chairman, I suggest we move this transfer forward. I suggest we hold it, and we ask some questions. And then it came to Appropriations for changes, or to be finally approved. I'll tell you, we just approved a transfer maybe 3 weeks ago that we received in June. The departments are a lot more willing to talk with you and work with you when they really need that transfer, and you're holding on to it and you're scrutinizing it. Again, I think it creates a better process. The third thing I want to talk about is, I'll call it the lockbox concept. In the original House budget, we cut 25% from IT. We have some IT problems in the state of Michigan. We have overspending problems. We have programs being worked on that are not working. We have transparency problems. We cut 25% in the House budget to send a message, but the reality is we do need to keep these programs going. So how do we back off of that but keep our message out there? And the way we did that was we said we will restore your funding. We'll get 100% of your funding. It's going to go over here in this lockbox. We'll give you 25% of it. And in 3 months, come to the Appropriations Committee, report on where you are on your spending, report on if the programs are working, report on if you're under target, over target, and then we'll decide if we're going to give you the next 25%. And so on. So we did it where there was language in there that you can receive your money quarterly. We did that with the Education Department as well, MDE, Michigan Department of Education, because we give them their money and then find out later they're not following the law. They're not implementing the law. Maybe we should hang on to that and make sure you're implementing the law. This is something that the governor actually stripped out, but it's something that got noticed. Wow, we can do that? Interesting. In fact, a lot of you probably know the name Tom McMillan. He had a quote I saw in MERS News, and he said, wow, if I would have known we could do that when I was in the legislature, I would have put every single budget in one of those lockboxes. So, these are ideas that can come back. The last one I want to talk about, and then we'll get into where we are in the budget today, is we did in the House budget a 3% across-the-board cut to every single administrative line, every bureaucracy in the state of Michigan. And this one drew a lot of attention. I heard quite often, you can't even identify what they're going to cut. Shouldn't you say, well, they can find savings in their operations, or they can find savings in their staff? You know what? That wasn't my concern. My concern was nobody has ever gone back and made state government find efficiencies. Nobody has ever asked them to take the hit. But on the other hand, the governor was asking every single one of you to find 45 cents per gallon, not caring where you were going to get that. And that got to a point where it was starting to become this public argument. And I thought, I'll have that argument in public all day long. If you want to argue over should state government find 3% efficiency, or should every one of my constituents in my district figure out, after already having their taxes raised over and over, where another 45 cents is going to come from, we can have that conversation. These are things that send ripple effects. Now again, governor, we backed off of it for the governor. But in the meantime, we did have some departments come and say, hey, I've got a little wiggle room over here. I've got a little wiggle room over there. And now we're starting to review end-of-year lapses, and you're finding, interesting, that line you argued that you needed all that 3% back, you're lapsing $1 million. So I'm going to take note of that for next time. So these are things that we can work on going forward. Now, obviously we have to reach a consensus at some point. And we have to get something the governor can sign too, right? So you have to make your statement, but then you also have to get something that can be signed. We came to an agreement with the Senate in June. The House budget and the Senate budget, by June we had a consensus. Now, we could have passed it onto the governor right then and there if we wanted to, but we didn't. We wanted to spend our summer negotiating with the governor and getting to a point where we could pass a budget with the governor's support. And that became a very difficult thing to do. One, we were getting accused of being on vacation constantly. Two, we were being accused of we never had a plan. We never had any options out there. Well, we didn't have any options out there because we chose not to just ram it through and jam it, which we could have done. We got to a point it was probably early September, where I think it became pretty clear that a long-term roads plan was not going to be worked out as part of this. There was a joint release put out by the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, the Governor, that said, we're going to take the long-term roads plan and put it aside for now. We're just going to get a budget done for the state of Michigan. Now, we went from, we need $2.5 billion for roads, to our disagreement then became, I don't want a penny more for roads. Now, I'll explain why. At that point in the budget, we had said, we found $400 million in savings to put into our roads. Now, if you're pushing for a tax increase, do you want to start at, we already have $400 million, or do you want to start at, we have zero? The goal was to spend every single penny in programs so that we started at zero. And that became something we couldn't move past. Negotiations broke down. Now, at that point, again, you've probably read, we were accused of, again, not working with anybody, we weren't negotiating, we weren't trying to get this done. We actually went and negotiated with House Democrats. And at that point, we actually found some areas of consensus with House Democrats. And that may be something that you could get, somebody could tell you a different perspective on that. But I tell you to look at a couple things. One, look at the school aid budget that passed and went to the governor's desk. It had 91 votes. There's only 58 Republicans in Lansing. It had 91 votes on the school aid budget that went to the governor's desk. Now, there were budgets we weren't going to agree on. I think we got 0 votes on corrections because we had some language in there about our corrections having to work with ICE, which of course the Democrats don't. They want to abolish ICE, not work with them. So we ran into some issues there that were more political. It had nothing to do with the budget. But there were other areas there was a couple budgets, I think we had all 110 votes. So we were able to work with them. Now, the governor also signed all 16 budgets. Now, of course, now we're getting to where we are today. There were 147 vetoes. There were 44 pages of administrative board transfers. But I want to put that in perspective, because you've heard the budget's a mess, right? How many people have heard that? The budget's a mess. It's a total train wreck, a disaster. The governor agreed with $59 billion out of the $60 billion and disagreed with $1 billion. Just to put it in perspective. Vetoes were about $1 billion. So just think about that. Now, personally, I think the budget's a bigger mess now after what was done. Yeah, sure, there were some things we could have done better for departments if we were at the negotiating table with the departments. Unfortunately, we walked away. So where are we today? You guys know about the 147 line item vetoes. As you said, some of them I'm in no hurry to restore. Some of them are, I think, purposely designed to bring us back to the table, to hurt people in Michigan, to hurt rural areas in some of them, to bring us back to the table. I think the expectation was actually that we would come running back. Well, let's be clear about one thing. We're not taking items that are crucial to the state of Michigan and trading them for gas tax. We're not taking items that are crucial to the state of Michigan and trading them for new programs that aren't crucial to the state of Michigan. We simply picked 24 of them and put 24 individual supplemental bills out for those 24 items and said, we will deal with each one of these on its own merits. Do you think we should be spending money on county road patrol programs to make sure our sheriffs can patrol the roads? Do you think we should be funding our rural hospitals so that people in Deckerville, in my district, don't have to drive an hour and a half to Port Huron to get to a hospital because we can't afford to keep a rural hospital open? Do you think that we should be helping people who have children with autism? Do you think we should be, I've got a list of other ones here, opioid crisis, ag stress relief. There's a huge list of them. Rural school districts, things like that. So we put those out there as individual supplementals. We also started talking about the administrative board. Now, the administrative board is a law, dates back to the early 1900s, that in my opinion was designed for if there was ever an emergency, where the legislature is not in session, the governor needs to transfer some dollars within a department in the case of an emergency. In fact, for a long time there was a cap on the amount of money that could be transferred, and in what we believe to be a legislative mistake, the cap was actually removed. So now, as long as it's within the department, this administrative board can move whatever they want from one line item to another, whatever amount they want. In total, there was about $600 million transferred. The only other time it's been used in history is Governor Engler. Governor Engler used it more as a negotiation tool, saying, I will do this if you don't come to the table and work with me. That got to a point where actually the negotiations started to happen. He backed off of most of those transfers. They left one transfer in place so that it could go to the courts and be challenged, because I think probably most of us believe it's the legislature's job to write the budget, not the executive's job, right? Well, it actually got challenged and was upheld in court. So here we are today, where this gets used to move $600 million around. Where we are at this very moment is, I think we are close on an agreement of, let's restore some of these line items. Let's restore some of these programs that are crucial. Immediate needs in the state of Michigan. And I will give the governor credit on it. I think that they are being genuine on what immediate needs are and working with us on that. The second piece to that is we need some assurances on the state administrative board that this won't happen again. And these two pieces have to move together. I'm not going to restore $15 million to our county sheriff's departments to find out that the next day there's an administrative board meeting and we're moving it somewhere else. And that's where we sit with, I think we're very close on a supplemental agreement. I think we have some work to do on an agreement for the administrative board. I'll tell you, I am the sponsor of one of the bills. There's multiple ideas on how to handle this administrative board. Obviously, I think a lot of us would like a full repeal, but probably not going to get that. So let's be realistic. There is an idea of putting boilerplate in each budget that says, we negotiate where it's in. This line item cannot be transferred. Problem is, that boilerplate is not enforceable. So there needs to be a change in the administrative board law that says, that basically adds these words, unless otherwise noted in law, that makes that boilerplate language legal. Now, where we are is, I believe the governor is saying, I will agree that that boilerplate is enforceable, but I don't want that legislative change. And unfortunately, a handshake doesn't make it legal or enforceable. So we're trying to come up with ways. We're trying to come up with ways to work together to where we can have some checks and balances on this administrative board so that we can move forward with this budget process. And that's really where we sit right now in that process. I'm happy to take questions because I'm sure it's a ton of information. I'm sure I said things that you don't understand. Sometimes I use terminology like IDGs and things like that, and you guys are probably wondering. So feel free to ask anything you want about that process and any more in-depth questions, things you've been reading in the news on the budget. I'm happy to answer.
Let me start by passing this microphone around. Shane, I'll ask you the first thoughts.
Maurice, before you do that, I just want to say on behalf of everybody in this room, this legislature, I'm not sure if you guys were here about a year or so ago, Tom Leonard was here, he and I had disagreement on the Michigan Catastrophic Fund and where to find savings on that. Well, the legislature just passed, I believe, we're gonna have a $100 reduction per vehicle.
It's good, I think it's gonna reduce to $100, so, I can't remember.
Well, it's currently
Policy,
it's currently $220 now, it's gonna be going down to $100. So however many vehicles you have, times that by $120, that is a real savings in your pocket because of Shane and because of the legislators we've got there getting this done. And that's huge. So I cannot thank you enough.
To put that in perspective too, I mean, everybody gets giddy about an income tax cut, but think about, we were talking about changing the income tax 0.35%. That would not bring most people $100 in relief.
I got 6 vehicles, so yeah, it's a big.
Well, and then the other really significant thing is the last thing you addressed was the administrative board. It's my understanding you've introduced legislation, or there's your legislation.
There's multiple ideas out there. There's negotiations ongoing. There's the idea of let's go ahead and repeal it, but with a sunset. Let's go ahead and put a dollar cap on it. You can still do this, but let's only use it for emergencies. You can cap it at $250,000. There's a lot of different conversations going on, a lot of different negotiations on how to do it. We need to reach that point to be able to move forward.
See, that's one of the most significant things, and we are all fiscally responsible. You have a budget, you have an online item. I've always advocated that you earmark it and don't touch it. And that's kind of what they're trying to do here, and I think they're
I
succeeding.
think we're trying to also recognize the separation of powers here, that it is the legislature's job to write the budget.
Right. And the issue becomes now, is it separation of powers or is it competition for power?
Sure.
And that's exactly what we're seeing with the governor. She's competing to take over the legislative powers. All right, with that said, anybody here have a question they would like to address? And there should be lots of issues. Joe?
Policy issue, I'll do my best, because I'm tied up on the budget, so.
In the term,
I'll turn it on.
You gotta hold it. I had to hold it. Yeah, it's on.
I guess it is. It's a term. You said terms that you use. Boilerplate.
So boilerplate is language that you can put in the budget. So I can put in the budget, give you actually a good example. In the MDOT budget last year, because I chaired transportation last year, we sold one of the airplanes. And now, we wrote it in the budget basically to say, MDOT will sell one airplane. We will not appropriate the aeronautics line item spending until the department owns 4 or less airplanes. Boilerplate is law for 1 year. It's language that goes in there. It can explain what a line item can be used on or not used on. It can put terms on that spending line item. There's boilerplate in there that's there year after year. There's Planned Parenthood boilerplate in the budget that unfortunately gets deemed unenforceable every year. It was even deemed unenforceable by Governor Snyder in the budget. But boilerplate is language tied to spending lines in the budget.
Legalese. Anybody else with a question?
Yeah. Did I understand correctly when you said that, I guess it's license plates, registration are going to drop $100 a year?
It's the insurance catastrophic.
Catastrophic fee on your car insurance.
MCAA, the one that you
MCCA fee.
It's a legislative enactment that was passed early in the year that's going to take effect in July. Correct?
Yes.
So if you get hit or injured in a traffic accident by an uninsured driver, where do you stand? Now instead of...
It's still no fault. You still pursue your own insurance coverage.
You're insuring yourself.
You're still no fault. You're just lessening the burden by the amount of premium that the insurance carriers are going to cover, and they are going to cap your coverage based upon
You have a choice.
You're going to have a choice as to how
You will
much.
have a choice as to the level of coverage you want, which includes unlimited if you want to continue to get it.
Good. Okay.
You have that option.
Just a quick question on the auto insurance. Didn't they take away the kind of, I don't know what you call it, redlining, where you could, like the city of Detroit,
Oh, yeah.
gets a higher rate? And won't that offset your $100 rebate from the catastrophic?
There are still ways the insurance companies are going to get around that, in my opinion. Yes, there is language saying you can't use a zip code to set somebody's rates. I can't remember, there was 4 or 5 criteria. They will probably still use which congressional district you live in or something like that. That was compromise language to get it passed. But what you're saying, I think I get where you're going, because I'm of a similar mindset as you that if you don't know what zip code I live in, now you're going to spread the Detroit cost out
Exactly.
across my district as well.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
You know, I used to be licensed in insurance. The factors and variables that they use are going to be continued to use. Because if you're in Detroit, you recognize that it's going to be a high crime area.
They charge you for risk.
They charge you for
I
risk.
mean, as Bo Lefebvre would tell you, if you guys know Bo Lefebvre, he's from, I'd say he's from Wisconsin, but he's so far west in the UP that he's practically in Wisconsin. And he says, why shouldn't my auto company be able to factor in the fact that the average car in my county has 1.4 passengers in it, and the average car in Detroit has 2.2 passengers in it. There's more risk, right? Why shouldn't they be able to factor that kind of thing in?
The problem with Detroit is we all know that half of the people in Detroit rely on transportation for employment. Half of them are unemployed, and half of them are no insured.
The reality is we're paying for them right now because most of them can't afford insurance.
Right.
So I think when we bring these costs down and we start to get people that are uninsured on insurance, we're going to see additional benefits from that.
We should also seek competition among the insurance carriers to reduce your rates when this legislation takes effect.
Yes, the education, one of the things that's funny for charter schools, I know that the increase, charters and certain other schools did not get the increase that public schools did. What do you anticipate going on with that?
I think that's going to be one of our areas of focus going forward. So the schools are funded, there's multiple, the main source of funding is what we call the foundation allowance. You'll hear people talk about the foundation. Every student gets $7,800, or there's still a gap there from when Proposal A was first set up that is narrowing down. Some schools are at a higher level. But every year you'll see that legislators increase the foundation $240 per pupil. Well, that's what the increase was this year, $240. Charter schools are not getting that increase under the governor's vetoes. So if your student goes to a charter school, they don't get the $240 increase.
I would say that includes like the inner city, the Detroit, because there's some great, Clark Durant, I mean, there's some great schools down there, and those kids, they're not getting that funding either. I mean, that's...
It'll be an area of focus for us going forward. I would consider it an immediate need.
Carl.
You spoke earlier, there was about $400 million that was supposed to go towards roads that the governor vetoed. And you'd also said there was 24 or so of the 100 and...
Individual line items.
That you're...
restoring.
Yeah. Of the billion or so that got cut, how much is still going to not be used at this point?
I don't want to get into that because I know the answer to that, and it's kind of a private negotiation, but...
I would just hope that next year, that you found all this other savings that everybody agrees we don't need to spend, hopefully you'll put that towards the roads.
Sure. I do not disagree with that statement. Whether or not we can get that done is another question, but I don't disagree with that design.
Yeah, I'm Jack Dempsey, and I've been out this week. I went to Wesley Academy to see if I could talk them into open up the school again, which you can't do it. But have you heard of Khan Academy? No. Look it up. My granddaughter, I seen it on TV. She couldn't do her math. She was having all kinds of problems. And she, in the 9th grade, she found a program. She's a straight A student in school ever since then. Now, it's a public school. We pay for that school. Where a private charter school, we don't pay for them.
I think you're mixing terminology. Is this a charter school or is it a private school?
Well, what we're trying to going to a private school or a charter school, you know, that type
So
of
a charter
thing.
school receives public funding.
Yeah, for public funding.
Okay.
Okay, but we can use Khan Academy for teaching the kids in there. And them students will all be A students. It works.
So charter school is still going to comply with Common Core standards because they're still going to take the M-STEP test.
Yeah.
So, but a private school isn't necessarily going to take that.
Yeah. Yeah, I had my son in Wesley Academy. There's 80-some% got the deal in there. But the thing is like on math and that, he has a way of teaching. And he's teaching a business person, son or a daughter, but she couldn't do her math. And when he got done with her, he was 22,000 people on his back. He's teaching, I think, 21 or 22 million people right now. They don't charge nothing. And you actually could get by with anybody in the room with his teachings and run that class. And I think we're about time our public school system in Michigan State, we're what are we, 34 in the United States?
I don't know. The
I think
exact number,
34.
We're not in the top half.
No, they're 34. And what are we, 38 countries down from the top? China, and it was making us look like a bunch of idiots. They're getting so far ahead of us technology, they're leaving us in the dust. We have to change.
I think on the topic you're on, I think there's a couple of things that can be done. One, the state needs to get out of the business of telling how to teach it and let the teachers tell people how to figure out how they want to teach it.
There's a Tea Party, man.
And two, I think that the more we can have our locals control our schools, because what needs to be taught in Croswell School District where I went is not the same as what needs to be taught in DPS in Detroit. And the more we can control locally, and you'll see so many of these things are tied to strings from the federal government where they dangle out, here's $1 billion, but do this to get you $20.
Yeah, we paid Wesley Academy, who was real superior in education, $2,100 a year. And you compare that with the school, and the way to beat this public school system, because Wisconsin's #1 school in the United States now. They have no tenure. They did away with tenure in Wisconsin. But you take our public school system, the money that we're spending, well, how to beat them is to set up like your charter school system, have straight A students come in that passes all the tests and set this other program up. And then you'll put a lot of heat on that public school. It's the only way we're going to get rid of the system and straighten it out. So I'm starting to work on that now. So.
Any other questions? Bill?
Well, with all this unspent money, if it doesn't get spent,
Stays on the balance sheet.
I was going to say, doesn't this is a nice example for that's money we don't have to spend next year, right?
I think some of these line items of the 147, I think let's let them go forward and show that maybe that wasn't necessary. You know, obviously there are things included in there that are crucial programs of the state of Michigan. There are also some things included in there that I'm not in any hurry to restore.
But you mentioned the roads. For people that don't know, why do they not want the money spent? I mean, you mentioned the road.
They don't want, because we found the $400 million in the existing budget. That puts you in a worse negotiating position when you're trying to get $2.5 billion and we're starting at 400 as opposed to 0.
Gotcha.
I think the desire would be, let's just spend that $400 million on some other program and start at 0.
Shane, I got a question. Let's say you got 24 items you feel online items.
I think there's probably more than that, but we're.
Let's say it's 24 that are very crucial.
Sure.
If in fact you don't come to a consensus between the governor, your opposite party, you guys could bring up the bill individually for a vote. Now, are you anticipating doing that? On some of these?
There are. I'll get into the options. I'm not going to say we're anticipating doing any of them. I think they're all options that are out there, things we could do. We could put, say, autism funding up for a veto override. It puts House Democrats in a position of, do you vote no on autism funding? Do you vote yes, but your governor's mad? We have that option, right? Now, I have another year I need to work with our House Democrats too, so you've got to think about the politics of it. It's another option of vote on the supplemental bill, which isn't a veto override, it's just a new spending bill with just this line item. So we could take County Road Patrol supplemental bill. Again, there's a decision we're all gonna vote yes. Do they vote yes, or do they vote no? All their county sheriffs know they don't support them. Then it gets to the governor. Does she veto it again? Those are things you can do as options. They also have political consequences with them. So those are options out there. They need to be weighed on, are they something we want to go forward with?
Well, we're getting close to the end of the year.
Well, the budget year started on October 1st, so
Okay.
it'll just keep, it's a cycle. It'll keep going.
All right. Is there any other questions for our honored guest here? If there is none, I'm going to...
Right in the middle there.
Yeah, I'm wondering, does the DOT's budget include bridge repairs, massive sewer repair, as well as the things that...
Bridge repair.
Or is it just resurfacing the existing roads and walking?
Bridge repair, yes. Massive sewer and infrastructure repair like that, no.
Because one leak can lead to another,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah. They're trying to think of how to explain this without taking a long time. There is a formula called PA51. I should have brought the chart with me. There's a really good chart on House Fiscal's website that you can find that shows how PA51 works. And it shows the funding that comes in and where it filters off to. And there is a rail separation fund. There's a wetland mitigation fund. There's a movable bridge fund. There are public transit funds. There are non-motorized path funds. And then it gets down to the MTF, the Michigan Transportation Fund, after it filters through this formula. And when it gets to the Michigan Transportation Fund, there's 3 buckets below that. State trunk line, county roads, cities and villages. And that's 39.1% to state trunk line, 39.1% to counties, 21.8% to cities and villages. That's where it gets into real road work,
Right.
which could be a bridge, could be culvert under a road, could be resurfacing, could be maintenance, could be all of those things. Now, a lot of times you'll hear us talk about when we are bringing in new funding, the 2015 roads plan, when you bring in general fund as opposed to statutory funds, if it's statutory, it's a gas tax, it goes through the formula by law. But if it's general fund, like the $400 million, we can say, we don't want to follow the formula. We just want to bypass that whole formula and stick it right down here into the roads. So it can be far more effective when we do things like that.
You got something up there?
Yeah, I think.
Right there. There you go.
Yeah, you shall receive, right?
So this is what comes in. These are all the different areas it goes, and then you get down here to the MTF balance, and if you scroll up, you'll see the 3, I call them the 3 buckets, where it's really effective. It's actually going to...
Last time, I think you should.
Yes.
Gotcha.
But you see, I mean, there's administration, other departments, comprehensive transportation is public transit, and then you see all the rail grid crossings, movable bridge funds, wetlands, debt service, a bunch of other things in there.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've concluded the first part of Representative Hernandez's presentation here.
I'm going to grab a water.
You grab a water. You want to take a little break here, or?
I'm good to keep going. I
All
just
right.
need a
Well,
quick drink.
I just wanted to say, this presentation that we had today is very informative. It shows you that our representative, our House Appropriations Chair, really knows what he's doing, demonstrates leadership qualities, is a leader in the House, is assisting us with our taxpayers, our fiscal responsibility, our transparency, and he's fighting hard for our rights. So with that, I do want to thank you very, very much for that effort.
It could be used in so many other places.
Right. Now, I won't...
You always got to remember, we got to get to 56 votes. If I was the budget dictator, we could do a lot of things.
I do want to mention to you that his next presentation is going to be on his candidacy for the 10th Congressional District. By the retirement of Paul Mitchell, he is seeking that seat. He's going to introduce and go a little bit more into his bibliography of why he's the suitable candidate for that position. Passed around
and there is available, and I think Christina has it back here. We are circulating
Nominating petition.
nominating petitions.
I
If you're,
signed it, guys, I will.
All right.
if you're so inclined, I hope you are, please sign. If you're a Lapeer County
For
resident.
some reason you're not in Lapeer County, let me know and we'll get you a different one. 'Cause they all have to be the same county on the petition.
Right, and it's, your
If you sign
classification.
one for a different candidate, you can't sign mine.
See what they validate your signature right there.
Right,
And this is not an endorsement. This is a signature to put the name on the ballot.
that's allowing him to run for this position. Doesn't mean you have to vote for him. We trust that he will persuade you one way or another.
I don't take a signature on a nominating petition as a ballot, and if you have signed for another candidate or want to hold out and see who the other candidates are, that's fine.
All right, with that said, continue on.
All right. Congressional race. So, I feel like this group I know because I know Bill and the Tea Party group I'm comfortable with, but we'll go a little bit more into just me and who I am and talk about why I'm running a little bit and why I think I'm the best candidate for this race. I am a second-term representative in the State House from Port Huron. I serve the 83rd District. It's the northeast corner of St. Clair County and all of Sanilac County. District I was born and raised in. I've never lived outside of that district a day in my life. Raised in Croswell, which is a small little farm town, if you guys know of it. Most people know where Lexington is because it's kind of a resort town. 4 miles west is Croswell.
Where the sugar plant is.
Yep, the sugar factory's in Croswell. And so born and raised in Croswell, live in Port Huron now. And wife Renee, been married to her for 14 years, have 2 daughters, Kelsey and Kara. They're 7 and 5 years old. Lots of fun, tough to manage on the campaign trail. A lot of times you'll see them with me because I'd never see them otherwise, and we campaign as a family. And every now and then I get somebody, you brought your kids, and say, well, that's not your thing. Find a different candidate because we do this as a family, and I think that's the future that this entire thing's about as well. I'm a graduate of Croswell Lexington High School. Went off to Lawrence Technological University right after that for architecture school. I received my bachelor's degree from Lawrence Tech in 2005 and my master's degree in 2009. 2005, I got an internship at a small architectural firm in Port Huron and worked full-time and went to grad school full-time, commuting an hour each way for grad school. It was a pretty rough couple years of my life. You can ask my wife, it was probably worse for her than for me, but we pushed through that, and over the course of 12 years I became the vice president of design at that architectural firm. I truly found the field that I loved. I love architecture, but as Bill knows, he knows me probably back 8 years, I love politics too. I'll go back a little bit and kind of talk how I got into it. My father was Michigan's home to him. A lot of people always ask me, when did he come over here? Now, Michigan is his home, born and raised here, but he was a migrant worker in Sanilac County. As a young boy, he was in the fields picking vegetables. Croswell at the time actually also had the world's largest pickle factory. So a lot of migrant families settled in Croswell, and you could work the pickle factory in the summer, the sugar factory in the winter. You had 2 seasonal jobs. So his whole family, they worked as a migrant family as children. Every now and then they'd go back to Texas and work the winter there. But Michigan was home. He went to school in Michigan, graduated from Croslex as well, and had to go to night school. He actually got booted out of school in 9th grade and had to go back. My mom grew up on a small dairy farm in Lexington, kind of dairy farm you can't really make a living on these days. And as a kid, I knew one thing from my father about politics, and it was that Democrats are for the poor and Republicans are for the rich, and we were poor. We were extremely low income. My dad actually started working at the pickle factory at about, I think, 18 years old. He worked there for 26 years till the day it closed. He knew that he was low income, so he must be a Democrat. He knew that he was Hispanic, so he must be a Democrat. And he knew he was a union worker, so he must be a Democrat. And that's what I grew up in. My dad was actually pretty active in some presidential elections, and and in Democrat politics. Now, my mom, she didn't care. Probably didn't vote until the Democrats upset her enough in probably 2004 for her to start voting. But I have one brother, 5 years older than me, and somehow he decided he was a Republican. I wanted to be like my older brother. So we both started saying it, drove my dad nuts, which made it even more fun. Yeah, but we both had to go through a phase where we had to learn if it was really true or not, and had to do a little bit of our own research on that. And for me, I graduated high school in 2000, voted for the first time in the 2000 election, and in 2000, if we really started thinking about politics, that's when some things started getting really interesting. And I went off to Lawrence Tech for architecture school, and my focus of my degree is in sustainability and green architecture at the height of the Al Gore movement. So here I am as a guy saying, I'm a conservative, I'm a Republican, in a university setting, and studying green design and sustainability. So I had to learn real quick to argue my points. And but I did learn that, you know what, this does fit me. And I joke a lot with my dad. My dad is far right now. My dad has made a total 180. He is a Republican activist. He's a delegate in Sanilac County. He's extremely involved in getting youth involved. But I joke with him a lot that my Democrat dad taught me everything I ever needed to know about conservatism.
That's good.
When he worked in the fields as a young boy, all the stories he ever told us was never a victim. Wasn't something he wanted from me. But what did he at least learned hard work from it, right? You can't sit there and complain that somebody did this to you, this is a horrible thing that happened to you. No. You learned a work ethic from it. He was hard on my brother and I. But he taught us all the principles of conservatism, right? You get what you put in. Sometimes you make a mistake. You better just get up the next time and do it right. I remember going to Sandusky, which was the county seat, to sign up for WIC with my mom, and coming home and my dad being mad about it. There's things we've lost in society today. The first thought on my dad's mind was, I'm not providing for my family. I'm angry. And I'm going to do everything I can to get out of this situation. Today it's, how long can I take this benefit? Right? And he's doing all this as a Democrat. So when I start getting more politically involved, all these things are clicking for us. And my mom was always kind of the rock of faith for our family. The one that dragged us out of bed every morning and made us go to church. And that is a huge piece too. That's really what changed my parents. I tell people, my dad didn't leave the Democrat Party left him. So I go through these college years and I really start to build in my understanding of it. And I get out of college, 2009, just the John McCain election was 2008, right? And now I'm realizing, not every Republican is good. Some of them are pretty bad. And I want to get involved. And I remember an old friend from church, Tim Keller, who was the chair of Blue Water Tea Party. And I knew Tim was involved, and I reached out to him and asked him how to get involved. And before I knew it, Tim had suckered me into all kinds of stuff. And I was running for county commission. I became chair of St. Clair County Republican Party immediately after that. I chaired a Republican Party convention before I'd ever seen one. So that was fun, learning on the fly. I got on the 10th Congressional District Board, served there for 4 years. I got on the state committee board, served down there for 4 years. Apparently, if you're a young Hispanic in the Republican Party, they raise you up really quick. So took advantage of it. But got really involved through that. And I was chair of the Blue Water Tea Party after serving 2 years as chair of St. Clair County Republican Party and realizing the Tea Party was true activism, right? Republican Party, we need good people there. We need good leadership, but we're tied up in a lot with conventions and finance reporting. Tea Party was true activism. I was looking for a candidate for the 83rd district seat, and I couldn't find one. And 2 people who I had been trying to recruit came to me and said, you can't find one because it's you, and go do it. And I did it. And I ran against the the son of our sitting state rep and the chair of the county board of commissioners, and I was the nobody. And I liked that position. I liked the grassroots position. And I won a three-way race by 16%. And got to the state house, and I talked about this at 10th District yesterday. I sat at that table at 10th District many times. I served 4 years there. I'm comfortable in a room like this with activists. I've sat in these rooms before. I've worked at victory centers to help people get elected, and then looked back and thought, what the heck happened? So, what would I want to see from your seat as for someone that I want to vote for Congress? And I jotted down 3 things yesterday. I want to know they're a conservative. Now, in an election, everybody can say they're a conservative, right? I pulled out my first mailer from my state rep campaign 4 years ago. And it said some very specific things on it. In fact, if a consultant had done it, they probably wouldn't have wanted me to say the things I said on there, but said I was against Common Core. I co-sponsored that bill. Said I was pro-life from conception. It didn't just say pro-life. 100% record. Said I was pro-gun, but it also said I was for constitutional carry, which I think a lot of consultants wouldn't want you to put on there. I have a perfect record and voted for constitutional carry. One of the things it said on there that is hard for a lot of representatives to keep that reputation, it said I was against corporate welfare. If you look at the Mackinac Center's ratings on corporate welfare, in 3 years I haven't voted for a single penny in corporate welfare. That's a tough one. That's one when campaign dollars start flowing in and the lobbyists are knocking at your door and the business groups are at your door. A lot of people have a hard time standing up on that one. I'm proud to say your representative, Gary Howell, and I are both in the same spot. $0 in corporate welfare. I have a proven record as a conservative. Now, I'm somebody who ran as the outsider one time, so I think when we get to this level, proven record is really important. 2017, I was ranked the most conservative legislator in the State House. In 2018, I had a 96% voting record with the American Conservative Union. Second thing I jotted down was I want them to be effective. Sometimes conservative and effective doesn't go together, right? We might know all that all too well in Lapeer County. Sometimes the conservative's the one just standing in the way, just pushing the no button because it's easy. I won the support of my colleagues and the Speaker of the House while being the most conservative legislator to be named to a leadership position. I'm able to navigate those political waters and be the Appropriations Chair today because my colleagues respect me, because the Speaker respects me, because they know I can get things done. That's a tough line to walk, a tough thing to do in the political world. Hold your conservative principles and become a leader. And I've been able to do that. The last thing I jotted down was, I want somebody that shows up. Well, everybody shows up in campaign season. At the 10th District yesterday, I was able to say, I was at the 10th District when I ran for county commission, and I lost, and I kept coming. And then I ran for state house, and I won, and I kept coming. Then I got appointed to a leadership position, and I kept coming. I'm a grassroots activist at heart. This is where I'm comfortable. I understand the people who do the work to put us in the positions we're in. I'm somebody that will continue to show up. And I'll close with, there's a book by a guy named Simon Sinek called Start With Why, if you ever get a chance to read it. If you don't have time to read it, go on YouTube and search the video, How Great Leaders Inspire Action. It's like a 19-minute video cliff notes of Start With Why. In that video he talks about there's different ways companies sell themselves. There's the what they do, how they do it, and why they do it is at the core, right? A lot of companies start with the how or the what. Very few start with the why. I'll actually give you an example, and I've seen it in our own Republican parties. I'm probably guilty of doing it at some point. go to a meeting and we're going to get Republicans elected, we're going to beat those Democrats. We're going to do it by getting better candidates, raising more money, putting together a better ground team, being more organized. Do you want to help us? Maybe. For those of us most involved, maybe. But a candidate needs to know their why. They need to sell the why. We'll get into questions today, and you can ask whatever you want. But I'm not going to present some 12-point plan to you right now, because I think it's more important to know at the core, why do I make the decisions I make? How do I make those decisions I make? Very simple. Our country's under attack. The country that allowed my dad to be a migrant worker as a child, and me, one generation later, to have a master's degree, and no college debt, by the way. I'm a Dave Ramsey guy. I have no debt. Wow. And the appropriations share of the State House is under attack. Those values are under attack. I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, as I said. I want them to know the same opportunities that I do. I want them to understand the same things, that all you get is an opportunity. It's up to you whether or not you take it. You will have people get in your way, sometimes unfairly. All you can do is get back up and prove them wrong. I want them to know a government that is founded on the idea that our rights come from God, and that government is there to protect those rights. Not to give us those rights or create those rights. It's there to protect the unalienable rights we have. It's the values I took to Lansing. It's the values I'll take to Washington, D.C., and I hope they'll join me.
This is why. This is one of the reasons I'm involved with the Tea Party, because a gentleman, this young gentleman, shows us a bright light. A bright light. Are there any questions of this nice young candidate for the 10th congressional seat? Anybody?
Mike's not.
I don't think I need a mic either. I got a lot of voice too. I got two kind of pet peeves with our elected officials and the laws that abide by them. Do you support term limits?
Yes.
Okay. Unless I'm mistaken, you serve one term in the federal Congress, you get your full pay for the rest of your life.
I think it's 5 years, but it's a short amount of time.
Right, and I think that's obscene. You know, I listened when our representatives berated myself and other people who worked in the auto industry. Whoa, with your Cadillac health care plan. And they got a plan that's far superior to what we have. And they berated us for having a decent health plan. Would you support term limits, passing, getting it, trying to get it passed? I know it's not going to be it's going to be an uphill battle.
I wouldn't be in the State House if it wasn't for term limits.
And
reality, I wouldn't be.
And to reduce, I don't say that they shouldn't get a pension.
How about live on the
If
same
you
healthcare
put
that
5
they
years
pass
in,
to
what
people?
is the normal work time? 40 years working? Okay, you'll get 1/8 of your
I'm of a
pay
different
for your-
generation when it comes to retirement. Again, I'm a Dave Ramsey guy. I don't expect Social Security to be there for me. I don't expect anybody to be there for me. I am responsible for me. Those programs may make it that long, and I hope that we have legislators that can go there and get the budget in order to protect those things. But I don't expect that.
But I think the pensions should be reduced to a reasonable percentage of what a normal working life is. And instead of making it a career like we have some of the congressmen and congresswomen in now that have made it a career, and you can't get them out.
Well, I'd like to address, number one, and Harry Akers is in the convention states, the paper, the resolution that this body resolved to pass today and hand to Mr. Hernandez, Representative Hernandez, was a document asking for an amendment for term limitations. That's one of the main issues of the Convention of States. So Gary, our representative, Gary Howe, and the co-sponsor of the bill, Kevin Daly, the Senator Daly, did proposition, here it is. This is the Senate resolution dealing with that exact issue. Taking this state, having a convention to make sure that those term limitations are implemented. Now, I'd like to address that because I keep bringing up the fact, and the name Carl Levin keeps appearing to me. I know Carl Levin, okay? 40 years he was in the defense mechanism, going all the way back before McCain, sat down there in Birmingham for over 40 years. There's not one bill I can recite to you that he passed did anything for Birmingham or his district. It was part of Detroit and part of that whole area. And I looked at it as guys like Dingley, the fellow who just passed away. His claim to fame is his disgrace in his last year of office was 50 years in. These people are career politicians. This is not a career politician. This is a young man who's an activist trying to run for office to do what? To represent his grassroots people. And I look at that. I look at the person who's retiring from the seat. He ran, did what he wanted to do for 2 terms, and decided that whatever's happening in Washington, it wasn't for him, but he did some accomplishments there. Paul Mitchell. So, I mean, I look at those people, they do certain things for a certain amount of people. Those people who are in office for 40, 30, 40 years. Pelosi, how long has Pelosi been in office? I mean, we look at these people, and I look at Trump going like this, you know, at a rally going, well, I don't know, I can't, you know. And I look at Shane, who's young, understands how to navigate, shows accomplishments, and shows leadership. That's why we as Tea Party people, we bring people to you so that he can explain the positions. But I will tell you, it's irritating to me, and that's one of the reasons I got involved. I see people like him. I'm much older than Shane, but I got back involved after a period of time because this is driving me nuts.
Age faster in politics.
Yeah.
We're close.
Yeah, no, you're not. But anyway, ask him any question you want, and I think he can stay after too. Yeah, I don't know how much time we'll do.
That insider trading, if you go down there, you're allowed to do insider trading. It's legal. Floki, when she voted for the one deal on that company and knew the company was going to, the stock was going to come, she went out and bought the stock, and that's perfectly legal. It's also perfectly legal for them to lie down there and do there. Now, them things need to be changed. The best one we had was the guy that got caught with $90,000 bribe in his refrigerator, and they sanctioned him in front of the deal, and he got elected next year. So, and in the state right now, we've had a few problems with state police on way back. I've had to report quite a bit. They kind of had their fingers on the scale, we call it the field side. But according to the law, they can perjure themselves in court on that stand. I couldn't believe it. But there's a law that they can actually perjure themselves. Now, them laws should be gone. We should not, and if I was running on election, like Newt Gingrich put out there, I would do away with the health care deal you're talking about. If the Tea Party calls a list of you can't lie in front of Congress, you can't do this, and have everybody sign the bill, that'd be a good thing for you to run on.
Sure. I don't know if that was a question, but as far as transparency and honesty, yes.
A lot of judges are like I'm well noted on the judges here.
But Shane, you've been thinking about this for a long time. I've known you for a long time, and I can't say enough good thing. And God bless your wife for letting you get on it. Just having that support, I can't imagine. I mean, how important that is, and you just did fantastic. But going into this thing. Can you tell us a couple things that you think that you might, where you could make a difference federally, as far as things that, like they're important? We kind of generalize stuff, but everything's going on right now.
Yeah, we can all talk big talking points and say debt and budget and economy and regulations and things, but I think one unique perspective I've gained over 3 years in the state house are all these areas that strings are completely attached to federal dollars down to states that are one size fits all across the country, not working in our states. I'll give you an example. One thing I learned very early on was, as I was chair of the transportation budget, just frustrated the heck out of me. We can't fill our potholes. Let's figure out where there's some money for this. And driving down 69 and back every day for 122 miles each way, and I'm realizing, oh, there's a lot of new cameras on the side of the road, a lot of new technology on the side of the road, but we can't fill the potholes. What is going on? Come to find out, of the federal dollars we get, we have to spend $37 million a year on roadside technology. Who at the federal government knows what, first of all, people in Michigan are paying the federal gas tax, giving it to them, and then they're sending it back, telling us how to use it. They don't know better than us how to use that funding. They don't know what our issues are in Michigan. I think there's so many areas like that that I think I could have a very unique perspective on. Some very specific ones, that one being one that just grinds my gears. So I think that is an area that I could go in there as somebody who has that state legislative experience, has dug into the budget in the state legislature and seen, like, well, we should do this, but we can't do this because they don't let us do this. So I think that's probably the biggest area that I would like to dig into. Yeah.
You know, you're talking about road maintenance, and a one-size-fits-all. I can give you a good example of that because I go to Arizona every year. They replace and repair and rebuild roads that we would die to have. They don't have the frost conditions in Alabama like they do, and down south in Florida. These people get, I think, the same amount of money per mile of road per year, but they don't have near the conditions to deal with the roads.
The majority of their funding is based on their state structure, but I mean, federally, we are a near break-even state. We get, I think, about 98 cents for every dollar back that we send. So there are some states that are donor states, there are some states that are receiver states. But yeah, I mean, every state's got its own needs. I think it has its own needs education-wise, healthcare-wise, transportation-wise. So yeah, all of those areas, you'll start finding that there's rules and regulations attached. Yeah.
I just had a quick
Sorry.
question.
Yeah.
In your position now, how do you decide what's a good program and what's not a good program? Do you have a certain philosophy? Do you have like 3 or 4 things when you look at a bill, you say...
When you look at a bill, like a policy bill or a budget program?
Either way, you know, you're the money guys. You're going to spend money on this project versus this project. How do you decide?
On a policy bill, the best piece of advice I was ever given, and this was before I went to the state house. I think it was probably after I was elected in the primary, and then when I was headed toward the general, which in my district, everybody assumes if you won the primary, you've won the general as a Republican. So I was talking to somebody, and they said, you have to be able to separate the issues of policy from the issues of principle. And when you get to Lansing, you're going to vote on 400 bills. If you look at every single one of them based on principle, you're going to have a really hard time there. But you need to be able to dig into the individual policy. And I will never understand, I'm not going to stand here and say, you know, energy, healthcare, education, transportation, all these different things. Oh yeah, I know them all. No. You have to build relationships in your district. I had a college professor who said, are there any engineers in the room? I might offend you with this one. I'd be proud to offend an engineer as an architect. But he said that an engineer knows everything about nothing, and an architect knows nothing about everything. And
I do engineering.
Okay. You held that until after I said it. So Lansing's very much the same way. You have to build relationships with your local government people, with people who think the same way as you in healthcare, think the same way as you in education, to be able to take a bill on its individual basis. And most of these bills are not issues of principle. They are issues of policy. And you have to fight for what's best, and at the end of the day, decide, is it more good than bad for my district? You're never going to get it perfect. Even my own bills, I don't get perfect. And quite frankly, sometimes we vote on things that are put in front of us that I just wish would go away, because yes isn't the right answer and no isn't the right answer, but I signed up to push that button one way or the other. So it does become difficult on some issues. In the budget, same thing. I mean, I'm the chair of the budget. There are so many things in that budget. For me to know each one of them inside and out is difficult. You have to rely on colleagues of yours that may have that program in their district. And You may have programs in that budget that you know aren't great, but it's a process to expose that it's not great and peel back at it. If I go for it once and don't get it, I may never get another crack at it. But if I peel away and expose it, I might get there eventually. So there isn't a great, clear answer to that. It's just trying to give you some perspective of how you look at different things. I don't know if it even answers your question, but
That's something.
I'm going to stop this right now. You're going to stay after a little bit.